Hey fellow Tsarnist! Welcome back to the series where we show builds that I've been trying. The main focus of this series is to have builds that look and play as fun as possible. But with these 3 builds we have today, we are also extremely powerful, and hence the change in the title. Now like, subscribe, damn it! Tell me which build is your favorite and stay for the 3rd build because it really is my favorite so far. Now let's get into it.
This build is all about using the Falx, which is one of my favorite DLC weapons. The Falx is a pair of 2 curved swords,
And that means it gets the best power staxing moveset in the entire game. There is not a single move here that is bad. All your attacks hit with both weapons at once and come out really fast. The Falx has bleed build-up, and both the running attack and jumping attack hit 4 times in a row, which makes them build up bleed pretty quickly, and also synergize greatly with the talismans that we're using, which are the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia and the Millicent Prosthesis for more consecutive attack damage, the Lord of Blood's Exaltation for a 20% damage buff when you proc bleed, and the Shard of Alexander, which boosts our weapon art. Speaking of weapon arts, the one the Falx has is disgusting. Hold the skill button to run very quickly to catch up to your enemies, and then let go to slash with both weapons, dealing some really good damage. But then of course, if you have a big enough attack window, you follow up with another input to let out this insane flurry of attacks that build up bleed and also trigger our consecutive attack talismans, giving you a huge damage buff, and then ending with a very powerful double slash attack to make full use of all the damage that we've accumulated. This already is a very powerful build, but of course this is not enough for this series, and that's why I'm also using the Smith's Crypt Dagger. The effectiveness of this build relies on us building up bleed and consecutive attack damage, but some bosses like to create distance between them and you by doing some large AoE attacks or dodging away, completely killing your momentum. But it doesn't have to be that way, because then we switch to our blood-infused Smith's Crypt Dagger and throw a dagger or 2 at them from a distance. Your light and heavy throws will maintain pressure on the bosses by adding to your consecutive attack boost. They also continue building up bleed and also prevent the bosses from regenerating their stance damage. Some bosses get too far, however, and for that we use the weapon art piercing throw, which travels a much further distance and deals more damage. However, it doesn't help us maintain our consecutive attack bonus, so it's a bit of a trade-off really. Our stat distribution allows us to use Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength for more damage and defense. The Curse Blade Mask gives us 5 more dexterity, which is our main damage stat. We're also getting 5 more dexterity from the Millicent Prosthesis, so that's 10. And that's why we're able to have 60 Vigor, 40 Endurance, and enough Faith to cast Golden Vow and Flame Grant Me Strength. The Falx is a Hornsent weapon, and so I leaned hard into the Hornsent aesthetic for the look. I used the Curse Blade Mask, the high beige clothes and trousers, and the Spellblade's gloves. And no wonder people hate the Hornsent if that's how they fight. This is by far the most powerful build so far in this series. It's not even close really. And this is the character sheet for this build. I'll be honest with you, this build is just my take on a Godskin Apostle cosplay. If you watch other build videos, you probably saw other builds like this. And it doesn't really help that the DLC didn't add any new Black Flame incantations. But I have this here for 2 reasons. First is the look, which I had to include in this series. I really do think we look amazing here. I used the Godskin Apostle hood, the Black Flame Monk gauntlets, the Gold Mask rags, and the Nox Greaves. These are all pieces from different sets, and they should never fit together, and yet they do. And that's why I love Elden Bling so much. And second is to say that although it is true that the damage over time property of the Black Flame spells is nerfed in the DLC, it really just doesn't fucking matter when your damage is that high. So don't feel discouraged to use them. Our weapon of choice is of course the Flame Art infused Godskin Peeler, which is a twin blade. And our weapon art of choice is of course the Black Flame Tornado, which is one of the most destructive Ashes of War out there. Smaller enemies and Malenia have no chance to fight against it, and although it takes a long time to cast, it's really satisfying to find a window for it, and to get it right. You can also charge it for more damage. Our seal of choice is the Godslayer seal, and this is by far one of the best seals in the game, and although it gets slightly less scaling than the Earth Tree seal at our level, it still boosts our Black Flame spells by 10%, making it just more useful for us. The Black Flame spells are really powerful. They get this damage over time effect, which is really good against enemies with larger health bars, at least outside the DLC. The Black Flame spell is a good source of consistent high damage, and it has good range, and you can also charge it for more damage. Scouring Black Flame has less range, but it is better for larger enemies and groups of enemies. Black Flame Ritual is fun, but I think it's a bit useless. And Black Flame's protection should not be ignored as a defensive option. 35 physical damage negation is pretty good, despite the Flask nerf, especially if you stack other defensive options with it, like Golden Vow, the Dragon Crest Great Shield, and the Obline Heart Tier. However, it doesn't stack with Flame Grant Me Strength, and that spell boosts both your fire and physical damage. So you have to choose between attack and defense here. For talismans, we use the Shard of Alexander for more weapon art damage, the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia for more damage with consecutive attacks, the Fire Scorpion Charm, which boosts fire damage. However, it does nerf our defense, so consider replacing it with a defensive talisman or the Flux Canvas. And finally, we use the Godfrey icon, which boosts charge spells and weapon arts, which is great for us because our weapon art and all of our spells are chargeable. And for the physic, I use the Flame Shrouded Cracktier and the Thorny Cracktier, which boost consecutive attacks. Feel free to swap that one to the Deflecting Heart Tier instead. And this is the character sheet for this build. This build is my take on a Drake Warrior build. And I have to say that I'm really proud of how this one looks. We look like an Elden Ring version of a Final Fantasy Dragoon. I use the Drake Knight armor, the Banished Knight helm, the Drake Knight gauntlets, and the Fire Knight greaves. This is my favorite look on this series so far. There are a million ways to play a Dragon Communion build, but the way I like to play this is to start a fight by stacking damage buffs, stance break an enemy, and then casting Bale's Flame Lightning to deal tremendous amounts of damage. Now let's break that down. We already use spells like Golden Vow and Flame Guide Strike for more damage, but we can go much further with buffs in the fight itself. We can cast Grail's Roar to nerf an enemy's defense and attack damage for 60 seconds. We can build up damage buffs from consecutive attacks with the Rotten Wingsword Insignia, the Malice and Prosthesis, and the Thorny Crack Tier, and then we stance break an enemy, and reposting them gives an additional 20% damage boost from the Blade of Mercy talisman. And then we just nuke our enemies with Bale's Flame Lightning. Bale's Flame Lightning has a really good hyper armor, so you can actually tank a hit or two and still hit your enemy. Our weapon of choice is the Flame Art Infused Queline's Greatsword. This weapon looks extremely cool. This is probably one of my favorite weapon designs ever. It's a heavy thrusting sword with the best range in class. It's fast and deals piercing damage, so you can be very aggressive with it, which is great for our build. This is a very stat-hungry build, and since Melisand's Prosthesis gives us 5 dexterity and Queline's Greatsword requires 18 in order to use, we actually have 13 base dexterity, and the talisman brings us up to that level. Also, can we talk about how cool the one-handed heavy attack looks? I know it's just a thrust, but oh my god. Our weapon out of choice is the repeating thrust for its ability to build up our consecutive attack buffs. Other options I like are the Flame Spear and Flame Skewer, but we're sticking with this one for now. For our last talisman, we are using the Flux Canvas talisman, which buffs all of our incantations by 8%. We also use the Flame Shrouded Crack Tier for more fire damage. And for the seal, we of course use the Dragon Communion seal, and we also use a bunch of other dragon incantations with it. We get access to many damage types with these spells, so we can actually deal with a lot of bosses that are strong to fire. For these bosses, I recommend using Borealis' Mist to inflict frostbite and lower their defenses, and then follow up with Dragon Maw to deal massive damage. Dragon Maw is faster than Bale's Flame Lightning, but it deals less damage, and so I only use it against bosses that are strong against fire, like Mog and Mesmer. Another spell that I like to use would be Bale's Tyranny, which is another spell that deals heavy damage. But this one is more effective against groups and such. Although you can only have Bale's Tyranny and Flame Lightning on NG+, and I honestly prefer Flame Lightning, but if you're already on NG+, then why not use both? This build is very versatile in general. You can use other spells like Knight's Lightning Spear, or Mesmer's Orb. And even Blessed Axe Ruin to flex on Bale. We even have access to Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike, which is one of the best spells in the entire game. Go wild is what I'm saying with this build. And this is the character sheet for this build. Hey everyone, if you made it this far, then thank you very much. Consider watching the first 2 videos in the series. Tell me which build is your favorite, or give me any feedback that you have, and bye-bye!